Well, welcome back to continue the discussion, Genesis chapter 42. Genesis 42 opens up a whole new layer of Joseph's story. Not just about famine and survival, but about family trauma resurfacing after decades of silence. There's so much here we didn't get to touch in the deep dive, and I'd like to talk with you through some of the deeper undercurrents happening behind the scenes. One of the most fascinating things to reflect on in this idea of emotional memory is the idea of emotional memory. The brothers don't recognize Joseph, but Joseph instantly knows them, and yet he doesn't reveal himself. He speaks through an interpreter, maintains his distance, and begins a process that on the surface looks like revenge, but might actually be a test, or maybe a carefully constructed path towards reconciliation. There's a beautiful tension here between justice and mercy. Joseph remembers the pit. He remembers their betrayal, but he also sees their fear, their hunger, their humility. And rather than punish them outright, he begins this unfolding drama that allows truth to surface on its own. This raises a powerful question for us, for all of us. When are we in the position to repay hurt with power? What does it look like to lead with grace instead of resentment? Another theme that stood out to me is the role of conscience and guilt. The brothers are haunted by what they did. They interpreted their misfortune in Egypt as divine punishment. But Joseph never says that. In fact, God doesn't speak at all in this chapter. It's like the silence leaves space for the brothers to come face to face with themselves. In ancient Near Eastern literature, guilt isn't always about private emotion. It's often communal. The sin of a few brothers becomes the burden of the whole family. And now in this famine, it's catching up to them. What's striking is that even after all these years, no one has truly confessed. And yet God is still working. That gives me hope. Because sometimes reconciliation doesn't start with a speech. It starts with hunger, with need, with a broken situation that forces us to revisit the places we'd rather leave behind. We also see the concept of testing, a theme all over Genesis. Joseph, like God, seems to test hearts. And the question becomes, is this test cruel or is it healing? Maybe both. Sometimes truth needs pressure to rise to the surface. And here, Joseph is crafting that pressure. He's not rushing forgiveness. He's watching, listening, waiting to see if their hearts have changed. That kind of restraint takes wisdom and maybe even wounds that haven't fully healed yet. I also want to point out the significance of Simeon being bound and left behind. In rabbinic tradition, Simeon was considered the most violent among the brothers, the one most responsible for selling Joseph. So Joseph binds him. Is that justice? Symbolism maybe? Or just a step towards truth? It's not clear, but it's intentional. And it's one of those small narrative details that tells us Joseph isn't acting randomly. He's crafting something, a path maybe, a reckoning, maybe even redemption. This chapter is a masterclass in slow, sacred confrontation. It's messy, it's emotional, and it shows us that sometimes God heals families not with lightning bolts, but with famine, silence, and uncomfortable reunions. And that healing, real healing, often starts when we stop pretending the past that didn't happen. Now, if this chapter stirred something in you, maybe memories of your own family or thoughts about forgiveness, truth, or waiting, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and share your reflections. What part of Joseph's restraint or brother's fear stood out to you? And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're walking through every chapter of the Bible together, and I truly believe these stories have something fresh to say to each of us each day. Thank you so much. Join me tomorrow for the next chapter.